Chapter 19. That night, the ghost shows me how to climb far higher than the landing where Tari and I tarried the last time. We climb all the way up to the rafters above the great hall and perch on heavy wooden beams. They are coiled around with a lattice of roots, which sometimes form the shapes of cages, sometimes balconies, and sometimes what appear more like tightropes. Beneath us, the preparation for the coronation go on. Blue velvet and hammered silver and braided gold tablecloths are rolled out. Each one decorated with the House of Greenbrier standard, a tree of flowers, thorns, and roots. Do you think things will be better after Prince Dane becomes the High King? I ask him. The ghost gives me a back smile and shakes his head sadly. Things will be as they always are, he tells me. Only more so. I don't know what that means, but it's a vague enough answer that I figure I am unlikely to get more out of him. I think of Valerian's body under my bed. The folk do not rot the way mortals do. Sometimes their bodies grow over with lichen or bloom with mushrooms. I've heard the stories about battlefields turning into green hills. I wish I could go back and find that he turned into mulch, but I doubt I will be that lucky. I shouldn't be thinking about his body. I should be thinking about him. I should be worrying over more than getting caught. We walk across roots and beams, unnoticed, jumping silently high above swarms of liveried serpents. I turn to the ghost, watching his calm face and the expert way he places each foot. I try to do the same. I try not to use my sore hand for anything more than balance. He seems to notice, but he doesn't ask. Maybe he already knows what happened. Now, wait, he says as we settle onto a heavy beam. For anything in particular? I ask. I have word that a messenger is coming from Balekin's estate, disguised in the High King's livery, he says. We're to kill it before it enters the royal quarters. The ghost says this without particular emotion. I wonder how long he has worked for Dane. I wonder if Dane ever asked him to drive a knife through his palm, if he tested them all that way, or if that was a special test just for mortals. Is the messenger going to assassinate Prince Dane? I ask. Let's not find out, he says. Below me, spun sugar creations are being finished off with high crystalline spires. Apples painted with nevermore are piled on the banquet tables in such quantity as to send half the court dreaming. I think of Carden's mouth, flagged with gold. Are you sure they're coming this way? I am, he says, and no more than that. So we wait, and I try not to fidget as minutes slide into hours, moving just enough to keep my muscles from stiffening. This is part of my training, probably the aspect the ghost thinks is most essential after a sly footing. He has told me again and again that most of being a killer and a thief is waiting. The hardest thing, according to him, is not letting your mind drift to other things. He seems to be right. I've here watching the ebb and flow of the servants. My thoughts turn to the coronation, to the drowned girl, to Cardan riding upon his horse as I fled Hollow Hall, to Valerian's frozen, dying smile. I wrench my thoughts back to the present. Beneath me, a creature with a long hairless tail that drags in the dirt scuttles across the ground. For a moment, I think it is part of the kitchen staff, but the bag it carries is too filthy, and there is something subtly wrong with its livery. It isn't dressed like one of Balekin's servants, and neither is its uniform the same as the other palace staff. I glance over at the ghost. Good, he says. Now shoot. My hands feel sweaty as I draw out the miniature crossbow, seeking to steady it against my arm. I have grown up in a house of butchery. I have trained for this. My principal childhood memory is of bloodshed. I have killed already tonight, and yet, for a moment, I am not sure I can do it. You're no killer. I take a breath and loose the bolt. My arm spans from the recoil. The creature topples over, a flailing arm sending a pyramid of golden apples spilling to the dirt. I press myself down against a thick cluster of roots, camouflaging myself as I've been taught. Servants scream, looking around for the shooter. Next to me, the ghost has a smile on the corner of his mouth. Was that your first? He asks me, and then when I look at him blankly, he clarifies. Have you ever killed anyone before? May death be your only companion. I shake my head, not trusting myself to speak the lie out loud convincingly. Sometimes mortals throw up, or cry, he says, clearly pleased that I am doing neither of those things. It shouldn't shame you. I feel fine, I say, taking a deep breath and fitting a new bolt into the bow. What I feel is a kind of nervous adrenaline soaked readiness. I seem to have passed some kind of threshold. Before, I never knew how far I would go. Now, I believe I have the answer. I will go as far as there is to go. I will go way too far. He raises both brows. You're good at this. Nice marksmanship and a stomach for violence. I am surprised. The ghost is not given to compliments. I have vowed to become worse than my rivals. 2 murders completed in a single night mark a descent I should be proud of. Madoc could not have been more wrong about me. Most of the children of the gentry don't have the patience, he says, and they're not used to getting their hands dirty. I do not know what to say to that. With Valerian's curse fresh in my mind, maybe there's something broken in me from watching my parents being murdered. Maybe my messed up life turned me into someone capable of doing messed up things. But another part of me wonders if I was raised by Madoc in the family business of bloodshed. Am I like this because of what he did to my parents, or because he was my parent? May your hands always be stained with blood. The ghost reaches out to grab my wrist, and before I can snatch it back, he points to the pale half moons at the base of my nails. Speaking of hands, I can see that you've been doing in the discoloration of your fingers. The blue cast. I can smell it in your sweat, too. You've been poisoning yourself. I swallow and then, because there's no reason to deny it, I nod. Why? The thing I like about the ghost is that I can tell he's not asking to set me up for a lecture. He just seems curious. I am not sure how to explain it. Being mortal means I have to try harder. The ghost studies my face. Someone's really sold you a bill of goods. Plenty of mortals are better at plenty of stuffs than the folk. Why do you think we steal them away? It takes me a moment to realize he's serious. So I can finish the sentence. He snorts. Better than me? Don't press your luck. That's not what I was going to say, I protest, but he only grins. I look down. The body's still lying there. A few knights have gathered around it. As soon as they move the body, we will move too. I just need to be able to vanquish my enemies. That's all. He looks surprised. Do you have a lot of enemies, then? I am sure he imagines me among the children of the gentry, with their soft hands and velvet skirts. He thinks of little cruelties, small slights, minor snaps. Not many, I say, thinking of the lazy, hateful look Cardan gave me by torchlight in the head's maze. But they are quality. When the knights finally bear the body away and no one is searching for us anymore, the ghost leads me across the rouge again. We slip through corridors until he can get close enough to the messenger, back to light finger the papers inside. Up close, though, I realize something that chills me my blood. The messenger was disguised. The creature is female, and while her tail is fake, her long parsnip nose is entirely real. She's one of Madoc's spies. The ghost tucks the note into his jacket and doesn't unroll it until we're out of in the woods, with only moonlight to see by. When he looks, though, his expression turns stony. He's gripping the paper so hard it's crinkling in his fingers. What does it say? I ask. He turns the page toward me. There, 6 words are scrawled. Kill the bearer of this message. What does that mean? I ask, feeling sick. The ghost shakes his head. It means that Balekin set us up. Come on, we need to go. He pulls me along into the shadows and together we slink away. I do not tell the ghost that I thought she worked for Madoc. Instead, I try to puzzle through things myself, but I have too few pieces. What does the murder of Lyriop have to do with the coronation? What does Madoc have to do with any of this? Could his spy have been a double agent, working for Balekin as well as Madoc? If so, does that mean she was stealing information from my household? Someone is trying to distract us, the ghost says. While they set their trap, be alert tomorrow. The ghost doesn't give me any more specific orders, doesn't even tell me to stop taking my tiny doses of poison. He doesn't direct me to do anything differently. He leads me home to catch scraps of sleep just after dawn. As we're about to part, I want to stop and throw myself on his mercy. I've done a terrible thing, I want to say. Help me with the body, help me. But we all want stupid things. That doesn't mean we should have them. I bury Valerian near the stables, but outside the paddock, so that even the most carnivorous of Maddox's sharp-toothed horses are unlikely to dig him up and gnaw on his bones. It's not easy to bury a body. It's especially not easy to bury a body without your whole household finding out. I must roll Valerian onto my balcony and hurl him into the brush below. Then, one-handed, I must drag him away from the house. I am straining and sweating by the time I get to a likely plot of dew-covered grass. Newly woken birds call to one another beneath the brightening sky. For a moment, all I want to do is lie down myself, but I still have to dig. The next afternoon is a sleep-deprived blur of being painted and braided, corseted and cinched. 3 fat gold earrings run up the side of one of Maddox's green ears, and he wears long, cold claws over his fingers. Oriana looks like a rose in bloom beside him, wearing a massive necklace of rough cat-green emeralds at her throat, large enough to nearly count as armor. In my room, I unwrap my hand. It looks worse than I had hoped, wet and sticky instead of scabbed over, swollen. I finally take Dane's advice and get some moss from the kitchens, wash the wound and rewrap it with my makeshift button brace. I wasn't planning to wear gloves to the coronation, but I don't have much choice. Hunting around in my drawers, I find a set in a dark blue silk and draw them on. I imagine Locke taking my hands tonight. I imagine him sweeping me around the hill. I hope I can avoid flinching if he presses on my palm. I can never let him guess what happened to Valerian, no matter how much he likes me. He wouldn't like kissing the person who put his friend in the ground. My sisters and I pass one another in the hall as we dart around, grabbing stray things we need. Vivienne goes through my jewelry cabinet, finding nothing adequately matching her ghostly dress in her own. "You're actually coming with us," I say. Maddox will be stunned. I am wearing a choker to cover the bruises blooming on my throat where Valerian's fingers sank into my skin. When Vivi gets down on her knees to sort through a tangle of earrings, I have a terror that she will glance beneath my bed and see some smear of blood I have missed cleaning. I am so worried that I barely register her smile. "I like to keep everyone on their toes," she says. "Besides, I want to gossip with Princess Ria and see the spectacle of so many rulers of fiery curds in one place. But most of all, I want to meet Tarin's mysterious suitor and see what Maddox makes of his proposal." "Do you have any idea who he is?" I ask. With everything that's happened, I had nearly forgotten about him. "Not even a guess, do you?" She finds what she is looking for. Iridescent grey Labradorit drops given to me by Tarin for my 16th birthday, forged by a goblin tinker with whom she traded 3 kisses. In idle moments, I have turned over and over who might ask for her hand. I think of the way Cardan pulled her aside and made her cry. I think of Valerian's leer, of the way she soothed me too hard when I teased her about Balakin, although I am almost certain it isn't him. My head swims, and I want to lay back down on the bed and close my eyes. Please, let it be known of them. Let it be someone nice we don't know. I remind myself of what she said. "I think you would like him." Turning to Vivi, I am about to start making a list of safer possibilities when Maddox comes into the room. He's holding a slim, silver-sheathed blade in one hand. "Vivienne," he says with a little dip of his head, "could you give me a moment with you here?" "Sure, Daddy," she says with small poisonous emphasis as she slips out with my earrings. He clears his throat a little awkwardly and holds the silver sword out to me. The guard and pommel are adorned, elegantly shaped. The blade is etched along the fuller with a barely visible pattern of vines. "Have something I'd like you to wear tonight. It's a gift." I think I make a little gasp. It's a really, really, really pretty sword. "You've been training so diligently that I knew it should be yours. Its maker called it Nightfell, but of course you are welcome to call it anything you like or nothing at all. It's said to bring the wielder luck, but everyone says that about swords, don't they? It's something of a family heirloom." Oriana's words come back to me. "He's besotted with you girls. He must have loved your mother very much." "But what about Oak?" I blurt out. "What if he wants it?" Maddox gives me a small smile. "Do you want it?" "Yes," I say, unable to help myself. When I pull it from its sheath, it comes as though made for my hand. The balance is perfect. Yes, of course I do. That's good, because this is your sword by right. Forged for me by your father, Justin Duarte. He's the one who crafted it, the one who named it. It's your family heirloom. I am momentarily robbed of breath. I have never heard my father's name spoken aloud by Maddox before. We do not talk about the fact that he murdered my parents. We talk around it. We certainly don't talk about when they were alive. My father made this. I say carefully to be sure. My father was here in Fairy? Yes, for several years. I only have a few pieces of this. I found two. One for you and one for Tarin. He grimaces. This is where your mother met him. Then they ran away together, back to the mortal world. I take a sudden breath, finding the courage to ask a question I have often wondered but never dared voice aloud. What were they like? I flinch as the words leave my mouth. I don't even know if I want him to tell me. Sometimes I just want to hate her. If I can hate her, then it won't be so bad that I love him. But, of course, she's still my mother. The only thing I can truly be angry with her for is being gone, and that's certainly not her fault. My dog sits down on the goat-footed stool in front of my dressing table and stretches out his bad leg, looking for all the world as though he's about to tell me a bedtime story. She was clever, your mother, and young. After I brought her to Fiery, she drank and danced weeks away at a time. She was at the center of every revel. I could not always accompany her. There was a war in the east, an unseelie king with a lot of territory and no desire to bend his knee to the high king, but I drank in her happiness when I was here. She had a way of making everyone around her feel as though every impossible thing was possible. I suppose I put it down to her mortality, but I don't think I was being fair. It was something else. Her daring, perhaps. She never seemed cowed, not by any of the magic, not by anything. I thought he might be angry, but he obviously isn't. In fact, his voice holds a totally unexpected fondness. I sit down on the bench in front of my bed, holding onto my new silver sword for support. Your father was interesting. I imagine you think I didn't know him, but he came to my house. My old house, the one they burned down, many times. We drank honey wine in the gardens, the three of us. He loved swords, he said, from the time he was a child. When he was around your age, he persuaded his parents to allow him to build his first forge in their backyard. Instead of going to college, he found a master swordsmith to take him on as an apprentice. From there, he got himself introduced to an assistant curator in a museum. She snuck him in after hours, allowing him to see ancient swords up close and honing his craft. But then he heard about the kinds of blades that could be wrought only by the fee. So he came looking for us. He was a master smith when he came here and even better when he left, but he couldn't resist bragging about stealing our secrets along with his bride. Eventually, the tale came to Balekin, who gave it to me. If my father had really talked with Maddox, he ought to have known better than to brag about stealing from him. But I have stood on the streets of the mortal world and felt how far it seems from Elham. As the year passed, his time in Fairy must have seemed like a distant dream. There is little good in me, Maddox says, but I owe you a debt. And I have sworn to do the best by you that I know how. I rise crossing the room, to put one gloved hand against the pallid green skin of his face. He closes his cat eyes. I cannot forgive him, but I cannot hate him either. We stand like that for a long moment. Then he looks up, takes my unbandaged hand, and kisses the back of it, mouth against cloth. After today, things will be different, he tells me. I will wait for you in the carriage. He leaves me. I hold my head. My thoughts will not focus. When I rise, though, I strap on my new sword. It is cold and solid in my hands, heavy as a promise.